Well, I don't know about you, but I have loved this mixtape series, from the music to the content to everything else. It's been so good. And as we get going today, I want to welcome those who are joining us online, those on TV, as well as those in person along with us. Now, something very crazy happened over 17 years ago. I got married, folks. Yeah. 2 people are excited about that. That's awesome. But no, I got married, and when I got married, I married the woman of my dreams. And not only did I marry the woman of my dreams, but we merged our finances together. And so now that I'm married, my wallet no longer is my own. It belongs to someone else. And now I have to talk through all my financial decisions and my plan with someone else. So now when you get married, you always find that there's usually one person who is a spender and one person who is a saver. Now, I happen to be a little bit of a saver. My wife is a little bit more of a spender. And we learned this about one another when we were on our way to our honeymoon in Hawaii. Now, I had purchased this incredible vacation in Hawaii. So we arrive at the airport, right? And we're sitting in the airport terminal, and my wife gets her ticket. And she takes one look at her ticket, and she looks at me and she says, "We're not flying first class?" I said, "No." She's like, "Because every movie that I've ever seen, the couple, when they go away on their honeymoon, they always fly first class. You're not gonna make me sit in the back, are you?" I said, "Yes." Do you know how much a first class ticket costs? I mean, you could sit in the back of the plane. You just put on your headphones so you don't have to hear the crying kids. You keep your elbows in so you don't get run over by the cart. It's just fine. Well, then we flew off to our honeymoon. And my wife didn't realize what she was really getting into, because I am a little bit more of a saver. Now, here's a picture of us as a happy couple on our honeymoon. Here's a closer picture so you can know how well I listen. That's how I found such a beautiful, attractive woman. Laura is the woman of my dreams. And we had an incredible honeymoon. We stayed at the nicest resort that I've ever stayed in. I mean, we're talking like a 5-star hotel, multiple diamonds, everything else. Well, the first morning I wake up and we're a little bit hungry. So I decide to order in some room service. Now, being a cheap guy, I order 1 pineapple and 2 coffees. That's it. But still, they go full bore. They send the guy up. He's got the little trolley and everything else just for my pineapple and my coffees. He puts it out and everything else. Well, we get the bill, and it's $34 for 1 pineapple. And so from then on, every morning I would wake up, I would go downstairs, I'd find my rental car, and I would drive to McDonald's. I'd buy their breakfast, and I'd come walking into the bougie hotel lobby carrying my Mickey D's bag. And sure enough, the people who worked at the counter, they would laugh at me the whole time. But what I didn't know is that everything in Hawaii is actually pretty expensive. So being a smart guy and trying to work out meals and everything, I found out, so sad, that Hawaii has a Costco. And Costco has this incredible food court where they sell hot dogs for $1.50 and pizza for only $2. And they don't change the price in Hawaii. I'm so sad to admit this, but we ate at Costco multiple times on our honeymoon. Oh, the fact that Laura is still with me is a minor miracle. Some people call me cheap. I just call myself very frugal. But the reality is, though, right, when you merge your finances together, when you go from one person to 2 people, there's always great tension. And if you don't navigate this world right, it can create great problems. In fact, in researching and preparing for this talk, I found some important information that I want to share with you all about this. I love what the professor, Sonia Britt, says. She's at the Kansas State University. She found that arguments about money are by far the top predictor of divorce. Now think about that. It's not your kids. It's not your in-laws. It's not sex. No, it's money. This is that hot button issue for every single one of us as couples. And what's interesting is it's not about the amount of money that you actually make. In fact, the psychologist Les Parrott found this. He says it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. Couples fight about money regardless of what their income is. Now, you might fight about different things with your money, because some couples fight about where to go on vacation. Should they go to Barbados or should they go to Europe? While other couples just fight about whether they can afford vacation at all. It doesn't matter how much income you make. Couples fight about money. Now, it may mean that your stress level goes down a little bit because of your financial security, but you're always going to have a hard time with money. That's why Les Parrott also found that 32% of married adults said that money was the most important issue for couples to discuss prior to getting married. Why? Because this is something that you're going to struggle with as married couples. This is something that you're going to have to work on almost daily together so that you can work on that fact. But with this, a lot of us think of money as a problem, but it actually is a great opportunity for married couples. I love what Ann and Chuck Bentley found in their book, Money Problems, Marriage Solutions. Here's what they found. Research indicates that married people experience less poverty and more prosperity than any other living arrangement, including being single or living together. Now, isn't that counter what we think? Right? As couples, a lot of times we think, oh man, she is the problem. Man, if my wife didn't go to Target so much, I would be financially stable. We blame the other person, don't we? But actually, married couples prosper better than any other living arrangement. In fact, there's a columnist for the New York Times named David Lionheart that found that there is this success sequence that happens within married couples, that they begin to thrive both economically, socially, and physically as well. And that is also with how faithful they are and how committed they are to one another. Their situation just keeps getting better and better and better. Now, here's the problem, though, and here's the tension with that. While it is this success cycle, it is also the point of the greatest heartache that you will ever have in your relationship. You will find more arguments about money, more fights, more times where you're at one another's throats. And it's also one of the greatest causes of divorce in the world today. So how is it that we can manage the money mix well? What can we do to get control of this? Because when you control this area, you thrive as a married couple. So today in our Mixtape series, we're going to talk about what does it take to get the money mix right. Now, this is both for married couples, but it's also for single people who are out there. Because the money talk is important, because you got to have a plan for how you deal with your finances. And the things that I'm going to share today, it's actually not my own guidance, but it's actually things that my mentors have shared with me, things that I've learned at church all these years, as well as things that I've learned around Sagebrush. So how is it that we can navigate the landmines of money in our relationship? Now, I want to encourage you today, take notes. There is lots and lots of information. So open up your Sagebrush app right now. Open up the sermon notes, because you're going to want to take notes on this content so you can review it later. The first thing that you have to do if you want to navigate the landmines is you have to understand first and foremost that everything belongs to God. It always starts with your mindset, doesn't it? If you want to get control of your finances, it starts with your mind first. Instead of having a mindset that says his or hers or mine or yours, that's where all the battles begin. But if we have the mindset that everything that we have belongs to God, everything is a gift from him, it changes us. We find this in the Bible in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verse number 11. Here's what it says. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, O Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and to give strength to all. Now, I love this because this is a prayer from King David. He's one of the richest men who ever lived. He had great money and he had great power. But what does David say? He says, everything in heaven and on earth belongs to you, God. You're the one who gives all wealth, all riches, all power, all honor. You see, David had this understanding that everything belonged to God. Now, wouldn't that change us? If instead of thinking everything belongs to us, we said everything belongs to God, it truly changes our attitude as well. We stop thinking of ourselves as the king of the castle or the queen of the universe. But instead, we realize that everything is just a gift from God. I first learned this lesson when I was about 25 years old, because I was in this small group where we studied how to manage our finances God's way. And the whole thrust of the study was to understand that we just manage the resources that God has given us. And let me illustrate that a little bit easier for all of us. 12 years ago, I came on staff at this amazing church here at Sagebrush. And I love this church. Now, when I got the job at the church, they handed me a Sagebrush credit card. Now, with great power comes great responsibility, because they gave me this opportunity to manage not my own money, but the money that God has given us, but the money and the resources that are set aside to be able to further the ministries of the church and our mission to know Christ and to make Christ known. It was given to me so I could take care of volunteers, so I could buy resources, so I could make sure that we are accomplishing our mission. But the money that I spend, it's not my own. It belongs to God. And so every time I pull out my Sagebrush credit card, I always ask myself the question, does this purchase honor God? Does this purchase help further God's kingdom? Is this the way that I should be spending this money? And what I've found is I began to manage this credit card better than all the other cards in my wallet. Why? Because I asked myself some questions. Because I wanted to honor God with my purchases. I wanted to take care of the offerings that you guys give so sacrificially every single weekend. And because when I walk through the lobby at church, I don't want any little old ladies hitting me with their cane. I managed that card so well that it honestly began to affect all my other cards. And I stopped thinking that this was my own resources, but I started seeing all the money, all the wealth that I had earned as God's. And so now when I pull out any of my credit cards, I'm asking those same questions. Does this honor God? Is this a way that's going to benefit God and my family and everyone else? And that truly changed everything, because I became a manager of God's resources. I love what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 25, verse 21. He says this, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Now, I love that because that statement is in the parable of the talents, which is all about managing the resources that God has given us well. Putting our money and putting our resources, our time, our talents in the right thing so that we can hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And those folks are the words that I want to hear someday. I want to hear God say, "Andrew, you did a good job managing all that I gave you." So how is it that we can manage God's resources very well? Well, you got to start by putting God first. Above everything else, you got to put God first. You got to say, "God, I want to honor you with my finances first above everything else." Then after God, you put the needs of others before your own. You say, "This isn't about me. This isn't about me being selfish. No, I want to help other people out who are in need. I want to help my wife and my kids out, so I want to make sure that I'm dealing with that." And then we make wise decisions. So instead of spending money on anything that we want, what do? We think about those purchases. We think, is this a wise decision? Does this honor God? Does this help other people? Is this benefiting my family? And when we do that, we change our mindset. We start to understand first that everything belongs to God. Then the second thing that you have to do is you have to keep no secrets. You've got to keep no secrets. Now, I do lots of premarital counseling sessions around our church. I mean, a lot of times you'll see me in my office, if you walk around the office, and I'm working with young, old, all sorts of different couples. And we always talk about the subject of money. We always have a time where we talk about money. But every once in a while, I have an occasion where couples come in and they tell me up front, they're like, Andrew, don't even bother talking to us about money because we plan on keeping our finances separate. She has her money, I have my money, and don't mess with our money. And I look at them and I say, well, that's kind of interesting because when you get very territorial like that, it breeds this culture of distrust. And you start wondering, what's the other person really doing? And it allows for this secretive world to take place when it comes to your finances. Now, I love what they say in the recovery world. They have this quote that they say about secrets. They say this, you are only as sick as your secrets. Now, take that one in for a moment because it's so true in a marriage relationship. When you keep secrets from one another, it will erode the trust that's necessary in your relationship. And that goes for everything, but that's especially true with your finances. When you're not honest with one another, when you're not talking about what's going on with your finances, man, it allows that secretive world to come in. And here's what Jesus says about secrets in Luke chapter 12, verse number 2. He says this, there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight. And what you've whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. What's Jesus saying there? He's saying, don't hold secrets. Be honest with one another. Live lives of integrity, because if you don't live that way, it will erode your relationship. And also because when you find out that your partner has kept something secret from you, it always leads to some heated fellowship. I mean, you're going to have a hard conversation every single time. And I also believe when you keep secrets from one another, you give the evil one a foothold in your relationship. And that's what the evil one loves to do. He loves to twist things in our mind. It starts with you just doubting what your partner's doing with their money. You start doubting what they're doing and what they're spending their money on. And then from that doubt, you start crafting stories. You start thinking through and you come up with these schemes in your mind about what they're doing, and then you jump to conclusions. From those stories, you become like fascinated with this incredible story about what they're doing with their money, and then finally, it leads you to the place where you think the other person doesn't actually love you. You see how it spirals out of control? And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And that's exactly what the devil wants to do. He wants to spiral you out of control to distrust the other person so that your relationship can be ruined. So that's why it's so important that you keep no secrets. After you keep no secrets, the third thing that you have to do is this. You have to make a plan. You have to make a plan when it comes to your finances. And I love the Bible because it's so practical. And one of the most practical books in the Bible is the book of Proverbs. And many of the Proverbs were written by Solomon, the smartest man on earth. And the others are collections of other wise sayings that are out there. But the Proverbs are great when it comes to the subject of money. Here's what it says in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 13. It says, "Do not love sleep, or you will grow poor. Stay awake and you will have food to spare." Then it says in Proverbs 24, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man. And then in Proverbs 6, it says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard." I love the visual picture there. Then it says, "Consider its ways and be wise." Now, those are great proverbs, but what's the gist of all of them? It's saying, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Have a plan with your work. Have a plan with your work life. Have a plan with your finances. Work hard. Because he wanted to encourage them. Some years are going to be lean. Some years you might not make as much money as you made the previous years. So you have to plan for that. But make no mistake about it, this world does not want you to have a plan. This world doesn't want you to have a plan because this world wants you to be a consumer. Take, for example, every time you check out at the grocery store, they have those impulse buys on those lovely aisles that you can see, right? It's filled with chips, candy, gum, soda, all those magazines and everything else. Why? Because they know that you will buy that stuff. The stuff that you don't actually need. They know that your kids will cry in the shopping cart until you buy those products. So they put them right there, don't they? Why? Because they want to make you a consumer. But here's the crazy part about our world today with the internet. The world is wired up to make you a consumer on the World Wide Web. Because every time you're on your favorite website, what pops up? All those banner ads. And it's crazy, right? It's like Alexa, your iPhone is listening to you. Because you'll talk as a family about, oh, we need to go on a vacation. And then like a couple days later, you will see this vacation ad pop up on your computer. And you'll be like, were they listening to me or what's going on? But you'll see this beautiful vacation and this plan and everything else. Or you might notice that you have gained a little weight since COVID. So all of a sudden you start talking about it and then out pops an ad for this fabulous diet plan. Or maybe you're of a certain age, like 44 years old, and you're male, and they've done the analytics. And so they figured out what 44-year-old males need. And so every banner that you see is an ad for Rogaine. Now, it doesn't happen for me, but I'm just talking about guys in general, okay? But right, you see all these different banner ads. Now, if you dare click on one of those banner ads, for the next 3 months, folks, all you will see is these fabulous vacations or these meal plans that will make you physically fit or a plan to make your hair luscious as it was in your 20s. So you'll see all these different things come up. Why is that? Because this world wants to make you a consumer. They don't want you to have a plan. So how is it that you can create a financial plan? How can you put things together to honor God with your finances? Let me recommend 3 things that you need to do. First, you need to set financial goals. You need to set some financial goals. And I would encourage you to set some short-term goals, anywhere from 6 months to 1 year from now, to longer-term goals, which would be between 1 year to 5 years. A short-term goal would be to pay off that high-cost credit card where you're just compounding interest month after month after month. A longer-term goal that we're working on in the Poe House is how to pay for braces, because it costs a lot of money. Those would be longer-term goals of, wanting to send the kids to college or other things like that are longer-term goals. You need to set both in your financial plan. Then after you do that, you need to set a budget. Now, none of us like the word budget because budgeting is no fun whatsoever. But when you budget and when you spell out all your finances, you're gonna find that the fights around your house go down. Why? Because you've talked about the plan. And so in every good budget, you map out what your current spending is, what your take-home income is, and then you plan out where it needs to be. So you eliminate all the junk, all the frivolous spending that you don't need to spend, and you start to plan out how you're going to spend your money. And then with this plan, you've got to deal with debt. You got to deal with debt. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7 says, the borrower is a servant to the lender. And actually, if you translate it, a closer word is that a borrower is a slave to the lender. That's how it is, isn't it? When you're in deep debt, you're enslaved to that creditor. It's all you think about at night. It's all that you wonder about. And in your marital relationship, if you're in debt, you will fight like cats and dogs every time that credit card bill comes in. So the way to avoid that is to deal with your debt. And one of the things that we would recommend that you do to deal with your debt is what's called the Debt Snowball, which is where you spell out all the debts that you have currently right now, and then you take the smallest amount, the smallest debt that you have, and then you attack it With everything that you have, you start putting money into the smallest debt. Then after you retire that debt, you let the juice flow to all the other debts that you have. And after a while, you can become financially free. Now, I am just glossing over all these different things. And the reason why I'm glossing this over is because you have homework this week. I want to encourage all of you guys to do this homework to get on a financial plan. And the homework we have is available on our website at sagebrush.church/money. If you go to our website to sagebrush.church/money, you will get 3 things that we want you to do this week. We want you to set some financial goals. And there's a resource online to manage your finances and to set financial goals. And then we want you to come up with a good budget for yourself or for your family. And then finally, we want you to work through that debt snowball. Now, this is both for couples and all of the singles in the room. Because if you do these assignments, God's gonna help you to be financially free. You've got to make a plan. Then the final thing that you have to do, if you want to navigate these landmines of money, is the 4th thing is this. You've got to communicate, communicate, communicate. Yes, folks, I did say that 3 times. Why? Because it's so important. Most of the marriages that I've seen fall apart, both because of money and also because of communication. It's communicating about money. Because why? Isn't that why we fight so often? It's because we've failed to communicate about what's going on. Think about the hardest fights that you've had. It's usually when you haven't communicated in advance. It's when you get that credit card statement, right? And you find some charge that you didn't know about. Or you find out that your wife went out and she bought your mom an extravagant gift. And you can't really argue because it's your mom. But you're angry because she spent that money. Or it might be that one of you signed up for a subscription service where every month or every week you're getting charged $10. Or it might be that your husband went out and he saw the low introductory offer of $1 for your family to sign up for the gym. And now every single month you're shelling out $100 to pay for that gym membership that you don't even use. So all those things, right, are a failure to communicate. But what if instead you communicated about those things? That you had an agreed upon budget that you're working on and a plan that you're working on, but when things come up outside of that plan, you just say, you know what, we're just gonna have a quick conversation. If we have to spend over $50, we're gonna call, we're gonna text the other person just to make sure that we're on the same page about this. What if during our date nights, maybe once a month or once quarterly, we sat down and we talked about our budget? I believe if we do that, God will get us on the same page, and those 2 lives that were once separate will become one. And that's what we've been talking about throughout this series, is fighting for that oneness in our relationships. And that's a concept that Jesus advocated for. He says this in Matthew chapter 19, 5-6, and he said, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the 2 will become one flesh. So they are no longer 2, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate." Now, I love those words, right? Because Jesus was advocating for that oneness. And that oneness also applies to our finances, that we become one, that we're on the same page, that we communicate quite often. And I love what it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12. It says, "A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." See, that's a picture of the married couple coming together and then God coming around that married couple and holding them together. Make no mistake about it, folks. The evil one wants to pull you apart. He wants you to be divided. He wants you to attack one another, but God wants to hold you together. And that holding together comes when we stop attacking one another. And instead of attacking one another, we lean on God's help. We look to God for help. And then we start working on our finances together as a united team. This last year, my daughter started high school. I can't believe it, I'm so old. But with high school, she went out for the varsity soccer team and she made the team. Now thank you. On the varsity soccer team, it was a young team. There were 16 freshmen and 8th graders. There was only 1 senior and 5 juniors. So this team, when they first started, it was really bad. I mean, every game, it was like the Bad News Bears. No one could pass, no one was sharing, everyone was selfish, they weren't working together. And they would lose like almost every single game. But then the coach worked with them. And I got to see this crazy thing happen on the team. They began to pass the ball well. They began to work together as a team. They began to be unselfish. And after they did that, they started winning over and over again. And the team went on a 15-game winning streak. Now, just this last week, it gets even better because they won the state championship. Yeah. I will take credit because I drove her to practice. But why did it work? They were smaller. They weren't as big as the other kids, but they worked together. And I believe that's what God wants for our marital relationships. He wants us to work together as a team. And I believe that happens when we understand everything belongs to God. We refuse to keep secrets. We're honest and open with one another. After that, you got to make a good plan. And then finally, you communicate. And I believe if you do those things, you'll manage your finances God's way. And here's what I also know. If you honor God with your finances, God will honor you with a great marriage. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for this very practical message. Lord, I know too, there are so many people who are watching online, those who are watching on television, as well as here in person, who are struggling with this area. So God, today I pray that they would stop attacking other people about their finances, but instead they'd lean into you, that they would see you as a good God who gives us every gift that we have. And that includes you sending your son Jesus to die on the cross for every wrong thing that we've ever done. And God, in light of the fact that you have given us such great gifts, God, help us to see everything that we have as yours. And God, help us to stop attacking one another, but God, help us to look to you for help. I pray, God, for the ones who may not know you, that, Lord, they'd first and foremost get their heart and get their life right with you, Jesus, so that they can know the peace that passes all understanding, that even when we go through hard times with our finances or anything else, God, you're with us, you carry us, and you help us along. God, I pray as a result of this talk for stronger marriages, stronger relationships, and God, that we'd honor you with our finances. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.